Hi, everybody. It's Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. Today's date, June the 9th, 2020. And my video today is a tribute video to a lady by the name of Ethel Blum. I had never heard this name until this morning. Most of you may or may not know who this is, but hopefully, if I don't screw this up, by the time this video is over, you'll have an appreciation for who Ethel Blum was, what she did, and why I made this video. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, Traveling with Bruce. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it when you folks subscribe to my channel to follow what I'm doing with regard to the cruise ship world. Thank you for giving me thumbs ups for videos that I make, also on my live shows, which are on Mondays. Thank you for following me on Facebook, on my Traveling with Bruce group page, and on Instagram. And thank you for support for picking up merchandise on the RedBubble store that I have with TWB merchandise on it. A royalty comes to this guy every time you pick something up. Thank you all very, very much. All right, let's talk about Ethel Blum. Ethel Blum passed away on Monday this week at the age of 98. She did not share her age when she was alive, but she made it clear that when she passed, it was going to be all right to reveal how old she was at that time. Who is and who was Ethel Blum, you might ask, and why would Bruce make a video about her? This lady was known as the Queen of the Seas, and also known as First Lady of the Port of Miami, a most interesting individual with a most interesting life. And what I thought I would do is I would take the easy way out, and I would read an obituary that was published in the Miami Herald today, just so that I don't screw this up. And let me just read this, and I'll give you some other details about her. Ethel Blum, the Queen of the Seas, as one newspaper called her, passed away on June the 8th, 2020, at her home in Miami Beach, Florida. She never revealed her age, often saying, "Everyone agrees that age is just a number, and mine is unlisted." As one of her last wishes, however, Ethel asked that her true age be listed here. She was 98. Ethel was born in Cleveland, Ohio, to Minnie and Abe Wildus, and received a degree in journalism from the Ohio State University. Ohio State. She met and married the love of her life, Colonel Milton Blum, an attorney. When Milton was stationed in Japan and then Germany, Ethel and the children were by his side. Ethel was a writer her entire life. Her first article was published in the Cleveland Plain Dealer when she was 10 years old. When Milton was in the military, Ethel was an investigative reporter for the Stars and Stripes. Eventually, she became a travel writer and specialized in travel by sea, including ships, ports of call, and the cruise industry. The New York Times called Ethel, quote, one of the country's leading writers on ship travel, unquote. And another newspaper dubbed her, quote, the country's foremost cruise journalist, unquote. Ethel wrote the first guidebook to cruising, The Total Traveler Guide to Worldwide Cruising, a renowned encyclopedia of vacations at sea. And she updated the book every 2 years for 28 years. In one edition, her dedication was, quote, to Milton, the man of my life who makes per person double occupancy worthwhile. He showed me the world and now has a hard time keeping me at home, unquote. Colonel Blum died in 1991. Ethel later married Eddie Dublin, and she continued traveling the globe with him until his death in 2010. Ethel sailed on more than 300 ships, and she never stopped exploring the world until very recently. Ethel pioneered travel talk radio or travel radio talk shows by hosting her own nationally syndicated show for 16 years. And she became a frequent guest on CNN. For 23 years, Ethel was cruise editor of Travel Trade, and she helped found and served as editor of Cruise Trade. When she was president of the prestigious Society of American Travel Writers, Ethel spoke to Israel's parliament about the economic importance of tourism. Later, she became an honorary fellow of Hebrew University. She was a recipient of the Glass Ceiling Award by the Jewish Museum. Ethel was named the First Lady of the Port of Miami, a singular honor bestowed on her by the shipping community in recognition of her faith in and devotion to and sincere promotion of travel by sea. She was present when the first shovel went into the ground for the development of the Port of Miami. Ethel played an important role in the growth of vacations at sea and was the piper who attracted multitudes to the burgeoning cruise ship industry. Both in her writings and in person, she took travelers through what to do and what to see in every sector of the world. In 2001, Ethel switched careers. Always supportive of community causes, she decided to devote her time to charitable and humanitarian projects. She was president of the founders of Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach and served on its board of directors. She was also a founder of the Miami Jewish Home and Hospital for the Aged at Douglas Gardens, which named her Woman of the Year in 2012. She was a member of two Alzheimer's organizations, Project Newborn, the Jewish Federation, and a dozen other charitable organizations. Ethel will be lovingly missed by her family and friends. Her family includes her children, Dr. Carol Bloom Mackhoff, Dr. Jeffrey Bloom, and Roger Bloom. She also leaves her grandchildren. This individual was really something. I came across an article called Queen of the Seas, which was written on January the 4th, 2001, by John Tanasachuk. And if I've screwed up that name, I apologize, but it's a long last name, Tanasachuk, staff writer for the South Florida Sun Sentinel in 2001. And he interviewed her at that time to talk about her life. And I'm going to read this article too, because again, I am not qualified to dig all this out myself. Here's the article. On the first cruise Ethel Blum was asked to write about 36 years ago, and this would be now in 1965, 66, the ship hit a Norwegian tanker, shearing off the stern and killing 19 crew members. Quote, "We were just hours out of New York," unquote, Bloom says from the safety of a sofa in her Aventura apartment. "I was the only journalist on board, and what did I know about disasters at sea?" While disasters are still not her specialty, everyone in the industry knew Bloom after that fateful tragedy. Since then, she developed a reputation as the country's foremost cruise journalist, the CEO of Cunard and Orient and Princess, and every other cruise line know her. Travel agents who subscribe to industry standards, travel trade, and cruise trade magazines know her, and so do many other regular cruisers through her newspaper articles and book, The Total Traveler Guide to Worldwide Cruising, which she has written since 1975, the oldest guidebook continuously in print. At the time of this article, it was in its 13th edition. When my books come out, I decide to have two sets of friends, she says. Those who say, "Isn't she wonderful?" and those who say, "I always knew she was a bitch." Oh my gosh. Whether you agree or disagree with her cruise reviews, Bloom has been on virtually every ship that sails from North America and European ports. For 16 years, she has been host of a radio travel talk show. When she was president of the Society of American Travel Writers, she spoke to Israeli parliament about the economic importance of tourism. Bloom, who's usually at sea 4 months a year, is referred to as the First Lady of the Port of Miami. "I would consider her the Dean of Cruise Writers," says Deborah Natason, a senior vice president at Cunard Line in Miami. There's the cruise reporter for the Los Angeles Times, who's very well known, but she has a unique stature because she writes for the trade and consumers. You won't find just puff pieces from Ethel. Bloom has seen all sides of the industry, having owned her own Bay Harbor travel agency for 10 years and selling it in 1996. There aren't many places she hasn't traveled. She can't count the number of times she's been in Paris, London, or any other world capital. The only place she hasn't seen enough of, she says, is Africa. Bloom is understandably nervous about being asked questions instead of asking them. But she's not all that nervous about her next big assignment, writing a series of weekly stories for America Online from a 104-day around-the-world cruise on the QE2 starting this month. This is back, remember, folks, in 2001. She did the same trip the year before. While Bloom's age is a well-guarded secret, everyone agrees that age is just a number. Mine is unlisted. She came of age when most women simply married and raised families. She did it all, marrying Lieutenant Colonel Milton Bloom, later Colonel Bloom, who died 10 years ago in 1991, immediately after graduating from Ohio State University, where she was an extemporaneous speaking champion. Together, they raised 3 successful children. In 1993, Bloom married Edward Dublin, an accountant and real estate investor. Well-traveled wife. So how did a girl from Cleveland get from there to here? I never worked for the money, she says, from her terraced 6,000 square foot condo. I think it's probably the work ethic thing I grew up with. You have to do something purposeful with your life. Florida was always in Ethel Wildis's radar. Her parents, Abe and Minnie, spent winters here and eventually retired to Miami Beach. She met the colonel on one of those trips. He had been an attorney in New York City, but closed his office and joined the Army during World War II. He became a career Army man, advancing quickly up the ranks. He showed me the world, she says, who fondly remembered life in Japan, taking up residence in a Frank Lloyd Wright house with 7 servants. As with all of their international postings, Bloom insisted that her children become immersed in the culture. We wouldn't have anyone who worked in my houses to speak English. We wouldn't have anyone who worked in my houses to speak English, she said. In Japan, she asked the commanding general, what would happen if I enrolled them in Japanese nursery school? At the time, Americans weren't allowed to associate with the Japanese, the general said. I'll speak for you at the court-martial. Bloom took that as a yes. A 2-week test run at the nursery turned into 3 years. Off they went to Germany, where Bloom perfected the language, having studied German in high school and college. She wrote freelance for Stars and Stripes, the U.S. military newspaper. I saw every corner of Europe, she says. But Europe was to be cut short when it was discovered that her husband had a serious heart condition. He retired, and the family moved to Miami Beach. Her husband suffered a serious heart attack, and Bloom panicked. You're a young woman who can't make a living, and you're going to be stuck with 3 kids, she said. Bloom got a job at the now-defunct Miami Sun. 6 months later, she was the travel editor. In true Bloom style, she took extension courses at the University of Miami in travel agency procedure to learn as much as she could about the industry. Children did well. Her children say her curiosity and willingness to learn had always been part of her personality. She was really into the value of studying and an education, said Roger Bloom, vice president of cruise operations for Carnival Cruise Lines. But she was also real good at teaching me the value of working. At age 15, Roger Bloom decided he was too big to go to summer camp, so he started hanging around the port looking for work. He figures he got the cruising bug from his mom. Finally, he got a part-time job with Carnival. At 16, I was already on a ship working, he remembers, having fibbed and said he was 18 years old. That was really not what kids who went to Miami Beach or senior high did in those days. Nor did such kids typically want to become a singer and actress. So Carol Lynn Bloom McCoff, now a doctor of psychology in New York, started entering beauty pageants. She eventually became Miss Florida. Her beauty pageant days have become part of the Bloom family lore. It's the kind of adventure that Ethel Bloom seems to relish. She was always craving something and being passionate about something new, says Bloom McCoff of her mother, and she loves what she does. She's energetic. She loves to keep her mind active. Roger Bloom, like his mother, thinks the cruise industry is a happy place to spend one's career. She focuses on leisure travel. It's fun. She's dealing with the fun aspects of people's lives, he says. Even with all the new ships, I don't know how she keeps on top of it. She can go on a new ship and she can get excited about it. Going with the Queen. When I travel with her, it's like going with the Queen, says Bloom's friend of 20 years, Betty Bernay, an artist from Bal Harbor. They all bow down to her, from the captain of the ship on down. Bernae will accompany Bloom and her husband on a 3-month Queen Elizabeth II trip. She started out with them last year but broke her shoulder on day 6. Bernae and Bloom are both old-fashioned philanthropists with their names on the walls of Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach. When Bloom's in town, she can sometimes be found at big-ticket fundraisers. Her photo shows up on the society pages. One of her favorite charities is the Miami Jewish Home for the Aged, where her own mother spent the last 2 years of her life. Beneath all that, beneath all her power and glitter, she's a softie, says her daughter. She's a powerful woman, but beneath all that, she just wants people to like her. When Barney's husband passed away, Bloom called her shortly after to invite her on a cruise. "I want you to come with us," Bernae remembers her saying, "and I don't want no for an answer. She got me out of the house, and it was wonderful because the 3 of us were together, and the purser of the line was there, and we sat with him. It really helped me get over the hump." What sets Bloom's opinions apart from so many other cruise writers is her apparent ability to go from high end to low end without blinking an eye. Bloom fondly remembers one of her earliest cruises with her first husband. It was $49 for the weekend. "It was upper and lower," says Bloom. "One of us had to be in bed for the other to get dressed. We had such a good time." Says Cunard and Natoshan, she can recognize what ships are suitable for different groups of people demographically, psychologically, and price-wise. The thing is that many people who aren't familiar with cruising think that all ships are the same. Joe Abels, editor and publisher of Travel Trade magazine and Bloom's editor for more than 20 years, says it amazes him that she keeps up with every nuance of the industry. "I think she knows more about the cruise industry than any living person, living or dead. She's also a very straightforward writer. I believe in writing right to people, not over them, not under them, but smack in the eye." Mitchell Salinger, a senior vice president at Orient Lines, says what makes Bloom's guidebook so effective is that she draws on her conversations with passengers. She's sort of like Auntie Mame when she's on a trip because she loves to talk to passengers, says Salinger. That's how she draws her inferences and insights about cruise lines. Try to get Bloom to talk about people she's found herself on the cruises, and she demurs. "Well, there was a time she was eating caviar, and she overheard someone say, 'Mabel, can you believe it? She's eating raw fish eggs.'" The truth of the matter is Bloom loves cruising. "I think specializing in cruises was probably the best thing I've ever done," said Bloom, who after her 3-month trip has cruises lined up for each month for all of 2001. "I hate airports. I feel every day that I have to spend in an airport is a day lost on a cruise you get on. You unpack, they do everything for you. I guess I had my druthers. I'd rather live on a ship for a couple of years." That was an article written in 2001 by John Tanasechuk. And I, again, want to reiterate that I'm reading it literally word for word. It was published in January the 4th, 2001 in the Florida South Sun Sentinel. This individual lady who passed away at age 98 on Monday was a true force of the cruise business. She hosted her own nationally syndicated radio show on WKAT Miami for 16 years. She was served 2 terms as president of the Society of American Travel Writers. She sailed on more than 300 cruise ships, circled the globe 6 times. I, Bruce Frommert, am just a lowly little YouTuber who loves talking about cruise ship vacations and thinks he knows a couple of things about the cruise business. Compared to this gal, I know nothing. Having found this obituary this morning by chance, I decided to dedicate this video to her and her legacy, and I'm humbled by the fact that I am trying to, in my own way, cover the cruise ship world in the footsteps of someone of this stature. There are many like me on YouTube who all are trying to cover the cruise business, and we love talking about cruise ships and going on these vacations, but this gal, Ethel Blum, is really a giant, and I can certainly understand why she was referred to as the Queen of the Seas for decades by those in the know. I hope I haven't bored you with this video today. Forgive me if I have, but this is the kind of story that comes across my eyes once in a while, and I drop everything, and I get right into it. I wish her and her family the best. God bless her. And thank you for all that you've done for all of us out here. Thank you, all of you who are watching me, following me, tolerating me. I wish you a great day today. Stay warm, stay cool, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.